What up, everybody? It's Aaron here with Get Your Geek On, and we are here for our review of Wandavision. Robert came in just for this episode.
I'm back, baby.
I have to talk about it.
Yes.
I'm returning. I was like, I could take a little time to talk about WandaVision. Episode 8, previously on. This is a spoiler review. We are going to be spoiling this episode and anything previously, and we're going to do some speculation too. So, make sure that you have seen all of these episodes before you watch this review. If you have not, I would recommend that you hit pause on this video. Thanks for coming by. Go watch the show and then come back. All right.
Exactly.
And watch us. And Frank behind the camera is going to put his earmuffs on because he apparently has not seen all of these episodes yet. Oh. That's all right. We're gonna spoil it for Frank.
I'm good. I'm not like one of those old people that are like, don't say nothing. Running around like that. How You Met Your Mother when the Super Bowl episode went around.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. So
where do you want to start?
Well, so this is another, like, we've now arrived post sitcom land. Right. This is really the first Wanda-centric episode that isn't set in the sitcom world.
Right.
Because we had episode 4 that was kind of like the outside of Westview episode that wasn't part of the sitcom world. But this is the first one that does center on Wanda that's not part of sitcom. We've caught up, and now we've got this confrontation between her and Agatha. So we don't get a theme song. We actually get a scene from like 1693.
Yes.
I want to talk about that scene at the end because I want to talk about what that might mean for Agatha. So I'd just like to start, I guess.
You can start at the beginning, I guess. At that point, or
the conversation that Agatha and Wanda have in the basement.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Where
Agatha is like, "Who the heck are you? Like, how do you know all this magic stuff? How can you do all these things, but you don't know basic things like how to cast protection spells so that I'm the only witch that can use my powers in this space?" She's like, "You don't know that? You didn't see my runes?" Which, by the way, did you notice? The runes were in a shape of a hexagon.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I was trying to figure out if they were something themselves.
So there was a rune inside, and then there was a hexagon shape around it, which I think we're discovering that the hexagon very clearly is tied to whatever type of magic this is. That's why the shape of Westview is in a hexagon. That's why there's been so many hexagons, is because this is all part of that magic that they're using.
Well, and that's the thing too, like DNA is a hexagon, like the way they draw DNA. So it could be like, this is the DNA essentially of magic, because it's a hex.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting that Wanda, clearly she has suppressed a lot of these memories, suppressed what happened, and Agatha's, seemingly for nefarious purposes, but we'll get to that, is going, how are you doing this? I need to understand what's going on.
And it's an interesting conversation she has with her, because she shows, talking about this basement scene, the cicada shows up again.
Right.
And she shows how much power she's essentially using just to control a cicada. And she even says, feeble-minded creatures, you can do it to. Here you are doing it to thousands of people miles on the edge of town.
Yeah.
And she says that took me years to use transmutation magic too.
She's talking about, mind control and then basically changing reality, for an illusion. And she's like, you just are doing this to magic thousands of people miles away. Yeah, magic on autopilot. And she's like, who are you? I have to know what's going on. And of course, Wanda doesn't want to do it. Yeah. She's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And she's like, did you forget who's got your children stashed away in her magical basement?
And I want to talk about one thing right before that too. So we have the cicada. She transmutates it into a bird.
Right.
Bird flies around and she's squeezing the crap out of that bird. First of all, I'm like, that bird's good. I thought its head was going to pop. I won't lie. But then she throws it.
Feeds it to the bunny.
And the bunny eats it.
Senior Scratchy.
Who is the last name of her son in the comics, by the way.
Yeah, Scratch. Nicholas Scratch, I think, is his name. Yeah.
My question is this: I've never had a bunny. Bunnies don't eat bugs, first of all, do they? Like, that's not a natural thing, is it?
I know, because I think they're herbivores.
Right.
So I think they only eat plants and things like that.
So it's possible the bunny could still be something.
Unless it's the bunny from Monty Python.
It has teeth. And only like 10 people will get that joke.
Yeah.
It's just a bunny.
Get the holy hand grenade.
On 3, not 4, not before.
Right. The calling of the numbers shall be 3, not 2, unless it is immediately preceding 3. 1, 2, 5.
2, no, 3.
Oh man, if you haven't seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, go watch that.
You're missing out on life.
Sorry, it was a little bit of a side.
It was. Right. But yeah, so the bunny, she throws it in there. And also we see 2 books. One opened up to some spell or some writing. Yeah. And a book that looks like it has, to me, people are trying to say it's Celtic or it's Norse because it looks like the Tree of Life to me, but the symbol could be Celtic.
Yeah.
Which either throws to Celtic, like you said. The ancient one is Celtic. I looked that up later.
Yeah.
So that could be a nod to the ancient one, showing that this could be ancient magic and possibly a book from her secret stash.
Yeah, and we do know, like going back to Doctor Strange, that there was that row of books that were, the ancient ones, and there was a book missing, and we know it's not Caecilius that took it because he only took a couple pages.
Yeah.
He did not take the full book. There is a book missing from that bookshelf, and so people have speculated that, it's possibly this one that Agatha has. Now, it could just be that the ancient one had that one in her room and was reading it.
Exactly. It's just like you were just reading it. And then the other thing I want to link it to more is Thor, because again, this is going with conspiracies and where could everything go if we link it to Thor, because Odin did keep all like the most dangerous stuff in his vault. If she somehow got this book, was what Odin thought was a very dangerous book possibly, but they could be leading to Hela.
Odin is a leading authority on what's dangerous.
Yeah, he really is.
Odin's a dick.
I still love how Hela pushed over the gauntlet. Like, this is nothing, like a
fake.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Like, again, to show that it's connected to that, which connects to Hela, which connects to a possible Mephisto.
Sure.
Because we're going into that hell, that underworld, essentially. I don't know. I like either theory, but
yeah,
I don't know.
And I don't know that we're going to get that answer. We've only got 1 episode left. I don't know that we're going to find out where that book came from.
I don't think
not in this show. Is it something that might be revealed later? Is it something that might be revisited at some point? Sure. But I don't think we're going to get that in this show.
No.
So of course the scene ends with then Agatha basically saying, you know what, we're going to go visit those memories and we're going to find out where your power came from and where all this happened.
Plucks the hair, makes a doorway.
And all of a sudden, again, Wanda doesn't want to go, but she's going to do it because Agatha's got her kids.
Right. And the door does have the same symbol as the book. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she's obviously using that book's magic.
Correct.
I just want to point that out.
Correct.
Too.
And here we go. We're in Sokovia. When her and Pietro are little kids.
Yep.
We see her parents, who are not the actors from the commercials, which has been a lot of speculation. People said those 2 actors were her parents. Nope.
And I love how we were talking this offline, that you were like, Marvel releases episode 8. Everybody's theories.
Just whatever theory you had, they exploded it. They said no.
Nah, we're done.
Not those actors. We get new actors as her parents. We find out that basically her dad is a DVD salesman. And he's got a bunch of old sitcoms.
We see Dick Van Dyke. Not in there.
Yeah, I Love Lucy.
Malcolm in the Middle.
Bewitched. There's just there's a bunch of them, and ones that directly you could see their influence in this show. Malcolm in the Middle is the one that's a bit anachronistic.
It was odd
because I think that scene is supposed to be 1999, and Malcolm in the Middle actually didn't come out until 2000. And so
really?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you're like, I don't know if this is does this work? Is this just a continuity error? Let's move past it. Yeah. But then we find out that her favorite is the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Right.
And she even has a specific season 2, episode 21, I think. It's the Walnut episode. And in that episode, it's about, Dick Van Dyke. Basically, he wants to watch, it's like a scary movie on TV. His wife doesn't want to watch it with him because she's afraid she'll get nightmares. It's a sci-fi movie about this alien race that is trying to prevent humanity from being able to rise up. And basically, so they're feeding walnuts to the population, which suppresses our creativity so that we can't build anything that would take us to outer space. And then it takes our thumbs away, because if we don't have thumbs, then we can't build things. And so Dick Van Dyke, then the next day he wakes up and there's walnuts everywhere, and he thinks it's just a joke. Everybody's playing a joke on him.
Yeah.
And, blah, blah, blah. And as he keeps going, he actually, starts to lose his thumbs and everything. And then he wakes up from his dream. Yeah. So this episode is all about how this is not reality.
Yeah.
You know, and we even see little girl Wanda, you know, kind of watching the episode. The explosion happens. Her parents die.
Yeah.
And then we see her kind of saying, you know, at the end of the episode, you find out everything is fine and, you know, everything goes back to normal. And so you can already see from that first moment of trauma, that first moment of grief, the seeds being planted in her mind that I don't want to deal with this. I want to pretend that everything is going to be fine at the end.
And she even comments when the bomb goes off at this point while they're watching the episode, the bomb goes off, parents are dead, Pietro and her are hiding under a table, and she even comments, at the end of the episode, it is just a dream, we find out. And then she reaches her hand out.
Yeah, and that's when Agatha pulls her out and basically says, so you used a probability hex to stop that missile from exploding.
No, which
was like... boom in my mind, because clearly Wanda didn't know that she did that, but I think the show is telling us that is what she did. She did have those powers. She didn't do it consciously, but she did prevent that missile from exploding.
With the possibility that maybe mutants exist.
Yeah, I mean, she had some sort of power, which again, mutants don't usually get their power till puberty. She's pre-puberty.
Very true.
And so...
But it's a very traumatic experience, which could trigger it.
Correct. So there's a lot of theories, you know, is she potentially a mutant, which I think we're going to get to when we talk about Pietro.
Yes.
But yeah, so we find out this traumatic experience that really shaped her. Possibly is where the first manifestation of her powers comes from. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of like Harry Potter, which I know you're not as familiar with.
Yeah.
But... you know, they kind of talk about, you know, kids in the Harry Potter universe that are magical start to display magical tendencies. And if they're not from a magical family, they don't know what's happening. And so like with Harry, you know, a couple things happens where like, you know, he gets a really bad haircut from his aunt and, you know, and he's worried about going to school the next day with his haircut. And in the night, his hair just magically grows back and he doesn't know how. And his aunt is angry at him. How did you do this? You know, that kind of thing. Other times, you know, he's being chased by bullies and then all of a sudden he just finds himself on top of a building, you know? And so it's like magic happening unconsciously, subconsciously.
Which is what's going on with her.
Yeah, and so that seems to be the same thing they're telling us here. So it was interesting and totally different because we've known since Age of Ultron, since the introduction of the twins, they talked about waiting to die for 2 days with this Stark missile, and we've just kind of always accepted that missile was defective.
Yeah, which is what she keeps saying.
And now we're looking at this through a new lens.
And I love how you comment on that. So going with what Agatha said, she goes, how long were you there? You know, how did they not find you? And I love that she's commenting that maybe it wasn't, and I don't know, maybe it was just me picking up on it. Maybe I'm looking into it too much. But I think she's commenting that it wasn't just the missile that she was doing the probability hex on, but that fact that no soldier ever came close to go kill them.
Right, because they're right outside. Safe as kittens.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, I never thought about that. Like, that's true. I mean, the bomb didn't go off, so why didn't anyone go check that area? Not knowing maybe the bomb didn't go off or the bomb dropped. But yeah, probability. Oh, okay, bye. Like, building shattered. There's no one there. Why am I going to go double check it?
Yep.
So I kind of never thought about that until Agatha put that thought in my head just with her wording. Again, I don't know if they were commenting that she was doing anything really or if it was just a throwaway line, but I thought that that's what she was getting at.
So I think that there are the two big takeaways from the scene, which is one, that she did have some sort of powers at that age and she used them to protect herself and her brother. And then we get her connection to sitcoms, right? We know she loved sitcoms. Her dad was a salesman. She's got all these connections to sitcoms. And so we see her watching sitcoms throughout all of her memories. They keep coming back and back and back. And we can see that she's got that connection. And so it starts to lay the foundation of why did this hex manifest itself as sitcoms. So we see that connection. All right. So then we move on to our next one because Agatha's going like, I see trauma. I see somebody that needs some therapy.
Years of therapy.
But you know, this doesn't explain your powers, right? So now we cut to Hydra. Wanda sees the door and goes, I don't want to go back there.
Right.
So clearly that was not a happy place for her.
No. And I love how, so we go through the door and her first comment's like, so parents died, and your first thought is to join a radical.
Yeah, I mean, like a terrorist organization that hates freedom. Blah blah blah. Yeah.
And I love that because I was like, it's a good way to handle it. Healthy.
And Wanda's kind of like, well, we were trying to change the world. Like let's just move past that. Yeah. Clearly, that was a mistake. And so then we see this. This scene of her encountering the Mind Stone in Loki's scepter, which at that point nobody knew that was the Mind Stone. Right. It wasn't until obviously the events of Age of Ultron, when they pull the Mind Stone out, that they know that that's what it is, and even then they're not necessarily sure that it's an Infinity Stone.
Right. But I love how Agatha knew.
Agatha knows right away. I mean, she clearly has knowledge of the Infinity Stones. Yeah. And so we see in that memory that Wanda doesn't even walk up to the scepter. The stone kind of comes away from the scepter, reveals itself to her. We get a vision of the Scarlet Witch.
Yes.
With
comic
the crown
version. Yes.
And the long cape and everything. And it kind of, it blasts her with some energy. And then we cut to her on the ground.
Yes.
And I thought what was really interesting about this scene is that the Hydra scientists get an edited version, which we see that in this show.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's an edited version of what's happening.
Yeah.
And so my question is that the Scarlet Witch that's editing it, not Wanda consciously, but it's the Scarlet Witch that's editing this video to conceal herself, maybe. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting.
It was. And I love how they did try to watch it over and over again. And you see her standing and then just on the ground.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure out what happened. And I really did like the scene for the fact that as a comic book person, we get the Scarlet Witch. We get to see what she really looks like, her true form almost. And then I liked how we see her right after that in her cell, essentially watching TV, and then it turns off and we get her and Agatha talking again.
Yeah.
And again, Agatha's putting 2 and 2 together at this point.
Yeah,
she's already figuring it out.
And she's saying like, the Mind Stone amplified your powers, what otherwise would have died on the vine. She's basically saying, I think what she's saying is like, she had this natural magic ability, but she didn't have anyone teaching her. She didn't have any concept or knowledge that she had that power. And so she just eventually would have lost it or been unable to use it.
Right.
And except that the Mind Stone came along and
opened
just basically said, boom, here you go. And so that's really interesting because again, that kind of leads to not a mutant. Because if the power would have died on the vine, then that indicates that it would have been lost, which would be not a mutant. Now, the other factor that leads to her being a mutant is the fact that Pietro got powers too.
Right.
And his were not magical powers. And so it's kind of one of those things where you have to look at it and go, why did Pietro survive? And is that because he's also a mutant? Or are we once again seeing Wanda's powers extending to Pietro and protecting him in his encounter with the Mind Stone? And so once again, is she altering the probability and maybe, altering the probability of his encounter so that he survives and it then gives him powers too?
See, I don't know. And it comes down to how much, if she is a mutant, how much would Agatha know about mutants? She may not have had any contact with the mutants and thinks this is, at that point in that conversation, this is just magic still.
And that's very true. And we need to be careful not to necessarily take Agatha at her word also.
Exactly.
Like she could totally just be lying about a lot of things.
I mean, that's the thing. She's been around, we know, at least since 1693 and a little bit older because at that point she's already probably in her 30s or so.
Yeah, something like that.
So you say she's been around since mid 1600s and she may have seen a lot, but we also know mutants. If we go with this idea that it could be mutants that hadn't come around until the last 100 years,
right?
Maybe it might be a little bit later because if we start with,
they're older than that.
Are they? I thought they started coming around World War. Well, you have Apocalypse.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on what storylines we're going with. Obviously, there are some ancient mutants.
Yeah.
But them being kind of mainstream, or there being a lot of them,
which is we put like in the 40s, right?
Because it's post World War II because it's about the concentration
camps.
It's the nuclear war that kind of kickstarts a lot of it.
Okay.
And so there were always mutants, and someone like Magneto would have been a mutant either way.
Right.
But the children of the Atom, coming in like the 60s and everything is all about that.
So, I mean, I think it's very possible Agatha knows nothing about that. I mean, because she's so busy studying, because she says, I studied this for years. It takes me years. You don't go out there, okay, by the way, while I'm studying, go look up mutants and see what's going on in the world. No, you sit in your, like the ancient one, you sit in your like area, you study, you practice, and you learn. Yeah. So I agree. We can't take her for her word on that at all.
Yeah. All right. So anything more that you want to talk about in the Hydra scene?
No.
Okay. So then we get to the emotional crux. And this is where, once we get to this scene, the rest of this episode is incredibly emotionally charged.
Right.
Like those first two, like definitely like you see the loss of her parents and all that stuff. Yeah. But I think it's really when we get to this scene that it really ramps it up, because now she's at the Avengers compound. Right. This is post Age of Ultron. She's just lost her brother. She tells Agatha, I was in a new country. I was all alone. My brother had just died. Yeah. This is the first home I shared with Vision. And you see a scene of them where she is sitting on her bed. She's watching Malcolm in the Middle, and she's just, I mean, we've seen what grief looks like. Right. She's in the throes of grief. Like she's shut off emotionally.
By the way, she's a great actress. I still gotta say it. She's selling this whole
Elizabeth
series.
Olsen is great. And we see the Vision, she kind of senses that he's there. And she lets him come in, and they kind of sit down. And
I love how we get the thing. He's still not using. He hasn't learned about like using the door still, so he still comes to the wall.
Clearly, he was like waiting on the other side of the wall. Yeah, and she's like, "Viz, like I hear you." Like,
it was just funny.
And we start to see this connection that's starting to build between the two of them, as Vision is trying to connect to her emotionally. He's trying to comfort her. He's trying to, but he doesn't really know because he's an android.
Exactly. And he's only been born for a few weeks maybe at this point. Maybe.
And so he's kind of talking like almost like a textbook. He's like, do you want to talk about it? Like, and she's really closed off.
She is. And I kind of like how you said that. You hit it on the dot, because she's like, why would I want to talk about it? Yeah. Well, I read in this because that's all he knows. Like he probably read a bunch of books to help her, but it's emotion. Yeah. I don't care what you read.
And it is, and she talks about grief. It's just like this wave that keeps coming and coming, and she's going to drown. And this is where you get the beginning of their relationship.
Right.
As Vision says, it can't all be sadness, can it? And then he says, I think the line of the show, which is, what is grief if not love persevering?
Oh, that was such a good line.
It's a fantastic line, and it's true. And it's one of those things where we have a character who can't experience these emotions, certainly not at this point. Yeah. And yet he's speaking to it in such a way that you see Wanda begin to say, okay, like I'm going to get past this. I'm going to move past this. And you see, I think that moment is the moment where Wanda, started to fall in love with Vision.
I think so too. I mean, and because she's explaining things and they're both explaining things from their own point of view. Cause like he said, I don't know anything except being alone. I have no one to ever had grief for.
Right.
And that's a good point. He was an artificial intelligence for Tony Stark for the last however many years. And then he finally gets a body, gets the ability to be an entity.
But he's something different. Like Vision is not Jarvis. Like he has portions of Jarvis, but he also has portions of Tony and also portions of Bruce and also portions of Ultron. He is his own character. Right. And so, yes, he does have some of those histories, but he's his own. He's the only one like that.
Yeah, he's the only one like that. He has, how about this? He has the memories of Jarvis.
Sure.
I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
So he has his memories, which again, he's an AI that I don't have anybody. I work for Tony. That's all I do. And now he has, like you said, everybody else. And it's interesting because I honestly never thought about that until he said it. I've always been alone. I'm like, oh crap. Like you really are.
Well, and this is like, I mean, Vision is one of the most emotionally intelligent characters that we've had in the MCU, which is weird because he's a robot. But whether it's his conversation with Ultron at the end of Age of Ultron, where where Ultron is like, you're naive and humans are terrible, and he's like, well, a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. Like he has these nuggets of really intelligent, emotional, but he doesn't always know what's behind it. Like he can say it, but he doesn't always know what's behind it. And this was another moment where he really hammered it home. And I think it's really key we see Agatha is moved by this too.
Right.
And it's not fake. Wanda's not looking at her and she's like putting it on a show. Like Wanda's in front of her and she's behind like wiping a tear from her eye because she sees what this has done. And this is the moment where Wanda's done.
Yeah.
Wanda's like, I'm out. I don't want to experience anymore. I don't want to see what happens next. And Agatha is like, you're right there.
You're at the precipice.
Precipice,
yeah.
The cusp and the precipice. There you go.
I'll try to throw them together.
And she basically is like, you're right there. You're ready to see what happens. You know, what happened when he wasn't there to pull you back from the brink.
Right.
What, tell me what happened. And you can see that Wanda still doesn't want to do it. And she finally, Agatha keeps pushing and basically like, he was gone and you wanted him back.
And then
that's where
door
it clicks
opens and now
Wanda.
we're inside Sword.
She's like, I wanted him back.
Yeah.
So
and we go in Sword.
Now we get to Sword. And we get a little bit different version of events than Hayward led us to believe.
I mean, Hayward lied?
I know.
Because he could be Ultron?
It's shocking he's not Ultron. But
Fury, shut up.
So we get Wanda, who, by the way, like think of everything she's been through, right? And the thing that kept coming to mind was in Infinity War. After she kills Vision, then Thanos brings him back only to kill him again. But then he snaps. And you can see Wanda in that moment as she's being dusted, there's relief on her.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't want to be in a world without Vision.
Exactly.
And so she's happy to be going away. And so now you've got that compounded. Now she's been brought back, but Vision's still not here.
Right.
She's angry. She's pissed. And she's in incredible grief, and she shows up here and she just wants to say goodbye. She wants a funeral, and she's being incredibly
nice. I will say that.
Yes, like she is very restrained in this moment, and she's just pleading
to
for
the
them.
Random guy at the desk.
Please give me Vision so that I can bury him and say goodbye.
Real quick, I want to comment. So she's talking to the guy.
Yeah.
Is it just me or is Hayward a jerk? Like, is she still there? As he's looking at the security monitor, it's like, you see her on the monitor when you're asking if she's still
Hayward
there?
is 100% a dick. And we're going to get into it.
I just thought it was funny because it's like, you see the monitor, right? Like, why are you even asking if she's still there?
Which literally, okay, I just said the word of 100% a dick. Like, that's Guardians of the Galaxy, right? I don't know that anyone's 100% a dick. Yeah, Hayward is, okay? Like, he is absolutely. So anyways, I love the moment where the guy's like, I gotta buzz you in. She's like, I got it. Like,
boom, opens
powers
the door.
Open the door, which we see that moment in Hayward's video. He splices the video in such a way to paint her as this villain.
The villain, yeah.
But she goes in. We see her meet the director, which now gives new context to that scene where she exited the Hex, I think in episode 5, and knew who he was and said, "Oh, hey, director." And so now this is their first meeting.
And I want to point out too, he told her, "I am the director," but he tells Monica, "I'm acting director."
Yeah. I noticed that too.
I was like,
that was a little bit different wording with those two people. So anyways, Wanda gets there and Hayward, is basically like, I understand you want to take Vision. Let me show you something. And she's like, and then I'll take Vision. And
look at this first.
Right. And he kind of just plays the coy game. And really, I mean,
which he's good at.
Again, if you want to talk about, whether someone is just like a dick or not, just literally with no warning saying, let me show you the disassembled body of your boyfriend. Just total dick move.
And I love how it's also right outside his office. Like, legit just opens the door.
Well, clearly this is like his most, this is his project that he is working on.
Yeah.
And so he tells her, we're dismantling the most sophisticated sentient weapon
$3 billion
ever made.
Vibranium.
Yeah. Which again is a lie. We find that out in the post-credit scene that they're not dismantling him. They're trying to bring him back online and use him for their own purposes, which we don't know what they are. We can assume that maybe it's the Tony Stark protection around the world, but it could also just be, I want to destroy the world. Like, we don't know what it is exactly, but he tells her, he basically, again, just through this whole conversation, he just keeps on just like poking the bear. He says, oh, you came back here to bring him back online. And you can see her confusion. Like,
I didn't get that either.
She's like, what are you talking about? And clearly we find out in the post-credit scene, they've been trying for years to bring Vision back online. And so I'm certain, as certain as you can be in a show like this, I am certain that he is planting that idea. He's trying to get her to use her powers to bring him back online. And so she is absolutely, or he is planting this seed. Like, use your powers, bring him back to life. Come on.
And that comes to me again, that I don't think he is just random generic, like you say, dick, number one. I think he is somebody, whether maybe it's not Ultron. I always just joke it's Ultron because it would be fun. I'd love to see Ultron come back. But the idea that, what's the other theory, is that he's a Skrull, or he's, I've even made the long shot that maybe he's Trask, the Sentinels and all that.
Yep.
He knows something about her powers that not even Wanda knows, though. Wanda just says, like, I can't do this. I can't bring people back from the dead. Yeah. And he's like,
well, and it's one of those things where you wonder, is he just out of ideas? And so he's saying, well, she got her powers from the Mind Stone. Vision was powered by the Mind Stone. Maybe
try to put two and two together.
I'm going to throw a dart at the board and see what happens.
Yeah.
Or does he know?
Yeah,
and so it's a question of, is he taking a shot in the dark, or does he know something? I'm of the mind that I think he's taking a shot in the dark. I think he is just a random absolute dick. He's not someone more. That's my personal opinion. I know you're on the other side.
I'm going to go with that he's somebody or he's something.
And so I think we are going to find out in episode 9 what the case is with him.
I really think if we don't see anything else like from him in the next episode, you're right. He's generic bad guy number 1.
Yeah.
But if they even show one glimpse of like a post-credit scene of like panning to him or something, he is somebody.
Yeah, it certainly could be. And so then we see, basically he once again, he says, well, he's not yours, which again, it's true, but it's also just the way he says it. Like he's trying
being
to,
a jerk.
He's trying to be a dick, and he's
goading her to do it.
He absolutely is goading her. She floats down there.
Yeah, breaks the glass.
She goes down. He calls off the men because he wants to see what's going to happen. He's like, "Ooh, use your powers. Go ahead."
Yeah, because she has like 4.
So he knows that she can bend reality. Then
he knows something. I think.
I mean, we don't know.
He knows.
Because you guys are saying that he recognized, or she recognized him in an
So in episode 4 or 5?
In episode 5, there's a scene which takes place after this, because this is a flashback. So this is the first time she's met him,
right?
And then later on, there's an episode where they see each other again, and she calls him director because she knows who he is.
They already seen each other.
But this is a flashback scene.
Oh, this is a flashback.
Yeah.
I thought she was flip-flopping back.
No, this is a flashback.
This is a flashback scene.
So she has like 4 or 5 guards. Like you say, he calls them down, and she's trying. It was a touching scene. I can't feel you anymore.
Yeah,
and I was like,
the callback to Infinity War, where the first time we see them in, I think it's
like Europe or something.
Yeah, it's somewhere in that area, like Belgium, I think maybe is.
Oh no, you're right. It's Belgium because of the train station, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And
they're in Scotland.
Are they in Scotland?
Oh, Scotland. That's right. Yeah, good call. Thank you, Frank. They are in Scotland, and they kind of have that moment where Vision's talking about the stone, and she just says, "I just feel you." And then, of course, at the end in Infinity War, where he's trying to comfort her. He's saying, "You can't hurt me. I only feel you," and all that stuff. So this has been a recurring thing where I only feel you. And in that moment where she's using her powers on his ripped out head and going, "I can't feel you," and it's like,
so hard.
Like it's just, it's
and I want to
you.
say this: they did really good camera work with the whole like showing how disassembled Vision was. Like you see the fingers are all pulling apart, and then they're just right in front of her, still pulling like the forearm apart and all the wiring. I'm like,
once again, total dick move.
Like, dang, poor Wanda watching him like literally dissect him.
Yeah, and then we cut to outside Sword. She does not have Vision's body.
No,
that was a total lie from Hayward. And we see her drive off. She drives into New Jersey
with a letter, by the way.
She drives into Westview. We see her pass a few characters. We see her pass Herb. We see Phil. We see Mrs. Hart, and we see the guy that's the mailman, who I don't know if we have a name for.
I don't think we have a name. He's a delivery guy, though, at least.
So those are the 4 people that we see for sure, and we know, okay, these people are people who, had identities, and we had seen, I think, Herb, and I think we'd seen most of them on the board.
I don't know about the delivery guy. I think that's the only one.
I don't remember. But so what we know is these people predate the magic, and they appear to be normal people, which I think we had kind of
we assumed most of them.
We knew that already. Now, conspicuous by their absence, somebody like Dottie, who I still like. I think there's something going on with her. There's just been enough little allusions to what's going on with her. And we also know Emma Caulfield is the actress playing Dottie.
Okay.
She is kind of an actress of note. She's done some big things. And she gave an interview before the season even started that Kevin Feige had to personally approve her casting. And that is not something that always happens.
Yeah.
And so that indicates that she's playing someone bigger than just this character we've seen
in one episode.
We've seen her in a few. So we saw her big role was in episode 2.
Right.
Where, it was the magic episode and we saw that. But then the one in episode 3, when the power went out, we saw a scene of her with Phil, where she's like, does this dress make me look fat or these earrings, whatever it was.
That's right.
We saw that. We saw her outside when Monica came to confront Wanda in the last episode. We saw a quick shot of her like gardening. And so we've seen just tiny little plants of her.
Dottie? Is Dottie the blonde one?
Yeah. Yeah, Dottie's the blonde one. So I do think that there is something going on. But regardless of that, we get to Wanda's driving and she drives to basically this plot of land that, used to have a house on it. The house has been demolished.
It's just the wall, like the bottom part of the wall.
Yeah, she walks in, opens up, this letter that she'd had, which you find out is actually the deed to this land that Vision had purchased for them. It's, it's got a nice note on it that says, a place for us to grow old in, from V with a heart in it. And I mean, everything comes crashing in on her at that moment.
It does.
As she's now potentially had her moment of saying goodbye to Vision. And now she's just in this house, overcome by all this grief. Going back to the previous scene, she's now at the brink. She's in the darkness and she doesn't have Vision to pull her back. And in that moment, basically she loses control and her powers explode out of her.
Build the house.
We see the house get built. We see it expand out to the town. All of a sudden, the 50s aesthetic is there.
Black and white.
Everything is being created with this red Scarlet Witch power, except for we see Vision being created, and the power that's creating him is yellow.
Yep.
In terms of Mind Stone is obviously what it's alluding to. And we see him being created. Everything's in black and white. He's in black and white. He kind of comes to, and we see her still in color looking at him. And then we see a frame of her stepping into the illusion.
Right.
And now she has taken on her 50s form.
Yep. And then we get the throw from like in the previews, Welcome Home, Wanda.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the sit down couch scene, the turn TV on, the kiss. And then the lights come on. And it's all a stage.
So I want to talk before we get to that. I want to talk about the moment where she steps into.
Okay.
Because I think that we've talked before about there's, subconscious Wanda, conscious Wanda, and then something else at play, which was Agatha. And possibly there's still something more, but certainly those three things are at play. And we saw subconscious Wanda is what created all of this.
Right.
But Wanda makes the conscious decision
to step
into it. And honestly, would we do any different? Like if you had those powers and you were in the throes of grief and all of a sudden you were presented with the perfect reality that shenanigans might happen, but at the end of the day, everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And here's the love of my life. And I'm just going to, I'm going to go with it. And so she makes that choice. I'm going to go with it.
See, I go a different route. I'd have gone Dr. Doom and just destroyed everything. I would create Latveria and be like, I'm going to rule this, and then I'm going to, be a pain in everybody's butt.
Well, you are Iron Man. You are Hayward saying, no, we're going to create Vision to put an armor around the world.
No, I wouldn't create. I would want to create something for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd create my own armor, and I'd be Dr. Doom.
Evil. So, anyways, but yes, then we see.
No, but I agree.
We see the lights come on. We get the slow clap from Agatha.
She's already figured it all out now.
Right, and she's going. Okay, like this is all fake. And I think it's really important to see that it's on the soundstage where previously, we were looking at it as this was the reality. Well, this soundstage was always there.
Right.
This was always part of it, but Wanda was choosing to omit it.
Exactly.
And now she's saying, okay, you've been through all of this. You've seen all these scenes.
It's like...
And now you're going to see it for the reality it is.
Right.
Is that telling you how the whole series got started? She's finally just snapped.
Correct. Yeah.
She snapped and created. It's like the whole no more mutants. You know, just bam, all the magic, and now it's like, no, I want my reality. Bam.
Except this seems to be an unconscious decision. Like it just seems like it's born out of her grief.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
Well, and that's
she just blocked it out.
Yeah.
Right. And I love how we get the slow cut, but that's kind of what triggers her to finally see the reality. Like you said, we see this downstage, we see the cameras, because then she's looking around and realizing it wasn't the black and white like house. It was, she's looking up and she's seeing the lights, like almost like you say, for the first time almost. It's like, but like, I agree. They've always been there. This has always been a sound stage. This has always been studio, whatever, you know, and you're just, like you said, you choose to admit it.
You're playing pretend. And she's finally fully woken up.
Exactly.
From, you know, what's been going on.
Right.
And that's the moment where Agatha disappears. We hear her children calling out to her. She runs out. Now this is really interesting because I'm questioning, and this is where part of we're going to touch on Agatha now, and I do want to go back to the first scene of the show.
Yeah.
Because up till this point, you know, we assume everything in these memories, it's been contained in the basement through these doors, right? Which we know Wanda can't use her powers there. We've seen Agatha, you know, show that. But now she's letting Wanda out of the basement, letting her access her powers once again, even though she does have the kids, you know, and like basically chokeholds with her power and saying like, you know, I know who you are now. But why is she letting Wanda out of the basement? And this is my question is, I want to know, what is Agatha's motivation? Because we've seen throughout this episode, she's trying to understand what's been going on. She's trying to understand how Wanda did this, where her powers come from, all those things. Now she's going, you are the Scarlet Witch. You're supposed to be a myth. You're the Scarlet Witch. You're using these powers to make breakfast for dinner. Like you're not using these powers in a way that you should be.
Which, first of all, we get the first call of her name, Scarlet Witch.
She calls her the Scarlet Witch.
And we get chaos magic. She calls it chaos magic.
Right. She says you're using chaos magic.
I love those. Those are like such a nerd thing for me.
But again, it's the question that I have, because going back to the very first scene, we see her say she's not fully in control. You know, things are bending to her power. You know, is that the truth, or is she just saying that to try and get out of it? Then we see the other witches attack her, and she absorbs their power and kills them all. You know,
and we're talking about Agatha, by the way. She's doing all that.
And again, it's one of those things where we're going, has she done all of this because she's going to try and absorb Wanda's power, or is she, you know, going to say, let me show you how to use your power again? Maybe.
But why choke the kids?
Well, I mean, she's got to get Wanda on her side, I guess. I don't know. Like, that's the thing is she's doing antagonistic things. She's doing villainous things. But then is she going to turn around and say, let me help you. Let me show you. Now, I don't think it would be for altruistic purposes. She would still have some sort of, you know.
I think that's Wanda's mom. Huh? I think it's Wanda's mom.
Well, we saw Wanda's mom die.
Well, in the comics, Wanda and Pietro were raised by a nanny.
Which this is not the comics. I think.
And I told him a theory I have with all this, and he doesn't like it.
I know in the comics, Magneto, you know, ends up being Wanda and Pietro's father. I think that the MCU is going to go a different way. Yeah. I think the MCU is going to say that the parents that she had in Sokovia were her parents, and I think that. I think that's the way that they should do it, because that grief is more impactful.
It is.
If that's the way that they go.
So I want to touch on what you're saying. Why would she bring her out? So number one, either aid to absorb her powers, but at the same time, she's also seeing in everything that Wanda's shown her, she has not killed anybody. She has yet to harm anybody.
Yep.
And guess what you did when you got out of the basement? You have a whole town of hostages now.
Well, and it's not just that she's not I wouldn't say she's not harming anyone, because we do know that this is hurting the residents of Westview.
Well, no, I'm saying like in the sense of looking at who she is. Like the memory she never saw Wanda kill anybody. Never, like when she went even to confront Haywood, she had to see what Haywood was doing. Agatha knows what Haywood was trying to push, and she knows, Wanda could have killed him, taken the body and buried it. She could have done whatever she wanted. Yep. And I think more so, it's yes to absorb her power, but I think it's at the same time to make sure I have a bunch of hostages now. Like, I can kill your kids, and you're still a good person, you're still an Avenger,
Right.
you're not going to want me to go kill all these other people in this town. Now I have a whole city of people I can murder, and you're going to either have to stop me from murdering them by doing what I want you to do, or I'm just going to murder them, and guess what? We're going to blame you because you're the only one in here that everyone knows about. Yep. It's your fault.
So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely layers, and we're going to find out in the next episode.
Yes. I'm excited for this.
If Agatha is actually the villain. Now, there's a lot of questions. Before we get to all the questions, of course, we do get the post-credit scene,
yes,
which, again, fully reveals Hayward as the villain.
Yeah.
I think we've been on that train for, as soon as he was introduced, we were like, this guy is no good.
Yeah.
But now we get the full reveal of not only did he lie about Wanda taking Vision's body, but they have been trying to bring Vision back online, and they just needed power from the source, which again makes me recontextualize that scene where they launched the missile at her. Was he was trying to draw out Wanda's power?
Right.
Did he know it would linger on this missile and that they'd get it back? Maybe not. Things seem to work out for him, that he's able to then use her powers to power Vision back up. But, you know, we kind of talked at the time, like, you're an idiot. You know that a missile's not going to take Wanda out. Like, now you got to start to relook at that scene and go, did he do that on purpose? Like, he knew it wasn't going to take her out, but he was trying to get her to use her power.
And see, and this comes to, I think he knows more than he's showing. And again, I think either a Skrull or not Trask, but just somebody, huh?
I think he's Loki.
Loki
would be
he could be Loki. I have seen that
That's a
theory. I have seen that theory. Now, the only question that we have there is that Loki in this timeline is dead. He has made it into another timeline. Could he jump back into this one? Sure. But we don't know how. But there is a Loki series coming up that could certainly shed light on it.
I mean, he did come back, right?
Well, that was in a different timeline, though.
Now it's a different timeline because he jumped out.
Stole the cube and then
Right.
In the different timeline.
But that was in the 2012 Avengers timeline, and so he created a new branch of reality with that timeline.
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Correct.
But I don't know. I don't know if I want to go, because I've seen that too. I don't know if I want to go with him being Loki.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think, again, I want a new villain.
Well,
I want somebody else.
And the other question, you know, we've been speculating that, you know, somebody's Mephisto. Nightmare has come up. Now, the ancient god of chaos magic in the comics is Chthon, I think is
Don't know how to pronounce that.
And that's where Wanda's powers came from. Is her chaos magic came from this entity because he was trapped under the mountain where she was like raised and blah, 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 comics weird stuff. So is he part of this?
Yeah.
You know, maybe Hayward is Chthon. Now, we touched on it earlier. I am really hoping and I'm believing at this point, although I think my confidence in this belief is going down.
Yeah.
But I am still believing that he just is a bureaucratic jerk ahead of the sword. Maybe he's even doing this for what he thinks are good purposes, like Tony creating Ultron. You know, this is to protect people, but he is absolutely making villainous choices.
Right. And so we see at this one, Vision back online.
Yep.
In a completely white outfit.
Yep, white Vision.
Blue eyes. And this is straight from the comics, where Vision was resurrected as the White Vision, but in the comics, no memory, no emotion. He is completely robotic, essentially.
And so it'll be interesting to see if he is able to be controlled by Hayward. Like, you know, is it kind of like a Hulk situation? I'm going to point you at what I need and then you'll take care of it? Or is this truly like we're controlling you beat by beat, action by action? You know, it'll be interesting to see that. Of course, we've got a lot of players on the board now.
Right.
We've got 2 versions of Vision, which, by the way, Westview Vision...
It's just a manifestation of
does have vibranium, because Hayward was tracking vibranium in the Hex. So
is true.
She created an actual Vision. Now, whether or not he can survive outside the Hex,
which
we saw that it didn't seem like he was able to, but he is an actual Vision that does seem to have all of the Vision powers. He can fly, he can do all those things.
Right.
He can phase through things. And so we've now got 2 Visions, one who is Westview Vision and one who's White Vision. We've got 2 witches. We've got Scarlet Witch and we've got Agatha. And then we've got Pietro, who's possibly mind-controlled.
I love Pietro. That was a funny thing.
And Monica. Those are our 6 kind of powered individuals.
Well, we also know we have the twins who do have powers as well.
And we have the powers from the twins. And then
8.
possibly Dottie, which
we don't. Yeah, we don't know about anyone else that's been affected yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those are our powered individuals. So kind of the teams seem to be, we've got 2 visions, 2 witches, Pietro versus a Monica. We've kind of got even teams.
Yeah.
If like we throw the kids in there and they're maybe
They're
throwing
the
off the
wild
balance
cards,
a little
maybe.
bit.
But they could fight whatever the other character is that's out there.
So I want to get to some questions that I have.
Okay, so I'm going to say this real quick.
Yeah,
we'll do this as 2 parts. So
Okay.
this whole first part's going to be the recap, guys.
Okay.